Hey guys, recording this on January 11th, January 11th, 2026. And, you know, sometimes I'm just the bearer of bad news, so I should be the bearer of good news occasionally. Sometimes you work so hard and fight so hard for so long, it's like by the time you get a break, you're too exhausted to even realize it. And we've gotten some major breaks. Is the world perfect? No. Do we have a few things to celebrate? And we do have to celebrate the work of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as Health and Human Services Director. Is it perfect? No. Is it amazing? Yes. These are absolutely historic breakthroughs that we've just experienced. Number one, as you know, or may not know, but we've talked about it since the early 2000s, maybe even the late 19, whatever it was, that previous century, the 20th century. Um, the US has an insane number of mandated vaccinations for children. It's insane. And I say that because, except for some crazy third world countries, no other nation on earth does what we do. I think it's over 80. By the time you're 18 in this country now, once you're born, you were, previous to Kennedy, lined up for 80 plus different vaccinations. Um, this is way more than countries like, third world countries like Denmark and Germany, where they have no science and they have no medicine. No, those countries do not inflict such grave harm on their children as the United States does. So anyway, Kennedy came up with a really elegant solution. He said, "Guess what? We're gonna vaccinate children to the standards of Germany and Denmark." That just cut the coerced vaccination schedule in half in the United States. That's how out of control we were. We were twice plus the amount of healthy countries like Denmark and Germany. And we, of course, are not a healthy country by any standard, and our children are certainly not healthy. Um, anyway, that's a big break. Now, better uh, would be, oh, and I think there's also, and I have to look into the details of this, but basically, a doctor can no longer be prosecuted or persecuted for saying to parents, I don't think this kid needs this vaccine. Apparently, and I don't know the details, but apparently before Kennedy, if you were a doctor and you're looking at a perfectly healthy child that has absolutely no risk of catching a particular disease, if you said, you know what, the risk reward ratio ain't good here, you could possibly have your license challenged. You could even possibly be sued for malpractice. I don't know. I'd have to look into the details of that, but apparently that was the case. So he's erased that nonsense. So you really don't want the state. You really don't want Anthony Fauci. You really don't want Gavin Newsom, et cetera, et cetera, deciding, making health decisions and medical decisions for your family and your children. That's not a good medical policy. Okay. Now we have half the country or more that is so brain dead and brain addled that they're just going to go and give their kids all 80 vaccines anyway. Um, can't help people like that. Can't help, like remember when Kennedy pointed out, and this is in my new book. When it will get done, I don't know. Tylenol is poison. You might want to take a little poison on a limited basis to deal with a big medical problem. You might try to find other solutions, but it is a poison, and it is distributed like candy, and people take it like it's nothing. Well, it's quite a serious drug. Even Advil, you need it, take it, but do not be popping those things all the time. You will pay a price. So anyway, he came out and he said, hey, this Tylenol stuff needs to be restricted a little bit. Oh, and out come all the people on TikTok. Well, I'm just gonna, they're showing themselves. Just I'm gonna give it to my kids. This is how sick and twisted people are. But anyway, let's get back to the good news. The other amazing thing is he has changed the food pyramid. The food pyramid was the biggest scam in history. Okay, everybody has known from caveman Og times to the 20th century what healthy food was. If you're rich enough to have butter, have some butter. If you're rich enough to have some meat and fish, have meat and fish. Right? Do not try to live on mass-produced carbohydrate garbage. Okay, but to serve the food manufacturing industry. That's the only reason they did it. They flipped the pyramid. They said, hey, you can live on cereal. You can live on pancakes. You can live on white bread. You can live on cake and cookies and potato chips and all that crap. Nothing wrong with that. That's the base of your pyramid. And all those other things, oh, eat very rarely. We don't want you to have too much healthy fat because that might actually help your health. So the reason this is important is this is not just a thing on that you hang on the wall. This is how kids get fed in public schools. And a lot of kids go to public school and they're being fed by the decisions of this formerly insane food pyramid thing. Like there should not be Coke machines in public schools, for example, right? And kids should not be fed garbage food, for example. So Kennedy turned that around. So these are the two that I'm sure about. I don't know all the details about the freedom he's giving to pediatricians and their clients. By the way, I have a long section in the book on the criminality of the pediatric profession. This is one of the lowest group of people on earth. I'm sorry. This is not your, I mean, I had a really sweet pediatrician when I was a kid. Those days are long over. Right now, they are nothing more than a vaccination assembly line. Okay, and they can spin that any way they want. It's bullshit. They are nothing more than that's all they do. And they make a lot of money from it. That needs to be reformed. He's on the road. Kennedy's on the road. Hopefully my book will give him, by the way, my book I gave him a lot of ideas for how to go after Fauci. Those of you that have been around a long time know that. I talk about it a lot. Maybe I don't talk about it enough. I don't know. But you got to remember where Kennedy was pre the real Anthony Fauci. He was member of the Dirty Dozen. He was banned by Twitter, TikTok, of course, banned by Instagram, banned by Facebook, his organization, Children's Health Defense. He was as knocked down as you could possibly be in this world. And that book was his turnaround. Sold 2 million copies. And they didn't see that coming. He didn't see it coming. CHD didn't see it coming. I saw it coming. And I worked on that book with him. The reason there's 5 chapters on AIDS, not just one, is because me, Celia Farber, and John Lordston contributed a ton of material. Now, why is AIDS important? Because AIDS was one of the templates for the COVID fraud. One of the things I'm writing about in my new book is they've been scamming us medically way before COVID, way before AIDS, way before all this other 20th century, early 21st century nonsense. The lying and the fraud in medicine goes way back, and it started to get industrialized in the 19th century. But in any event, Kennedy's now head of Health and Human Services. He now has the power to do the things that I'm talking about. Okay. One of the things that gave him that power was the success of the real Anthony Fauci, because again, you got to look at where he was before that book came out. He was flat. Not his fault. I mean, they ganged up on him in ways you can't even imagine. But that was the turning point for him. And one of the reasons that book had such resonance and such power is that Fauci was like, oh, I saved the AIDS crisis. I'm the god of AIDS. And we showed in the book that he actually killed hundreds of thousands of people in Africa, in the United States, gay, white, black, straight. So we knocked those legs. That was the key. That was the key thing. If you don't remember, Fauci ruled the world not too long ago, and nobody could take him down. And he was standing on the foundation of his great work for AIDS. Me, Cecilia Farber, John Lordston, the late John Lordston just passed away. We provided all that material to Kennedy. Kennedy wrote 5 chapters of it in his book, and that was very important for taking Anthony Fauci out. A lot of people that were ignorantly supporting him as the savior of AIDS realized that he was actually the monster, the butcher during that period. So anyway, I want to say this. I've got supporters, not a lot, but they're loyal. And it's that support that allows me to do the work that I do. And if you wonder where that money went, It went to me having the time to provide, first of all, reach him. That was like a job in itself. He was easier to reach than these bullshit podcasters, though. Much easier. I wrote him an intelligent letter. He called me up. It was like the old school, you know? Now I got to write 100 podcasters and maybe one will write me back. And then I got to spend 8 months trying to connect with them to do a show. Meanwhile, like, it's just crazy. I get on their show and I get 1,000,000+ views. Do they call me back? I don't know what's going on. I mean, I've given up trying to figure it out, but I don't care. I just keep my head down and keep working. But the point is, if those of you that have supported Brass Check over the years, and there are many, frankly, and whether it's $1 or even a kind word, that's why I had the reason to send Kennedy this stack of stuff on AIDS. And by the way, I made a film called Fauci's First Fraud. You can see it at Fauci'sFirstFraud.com. That film came out a year before Kennedy's book. And he used, I gave it to him. I said, use anything you want, man. And I'm footnoted, I don't know how many times. And I'm thanked in the book. So this is not, make believe. This really happened. But what do I want to say here? If you're wondering, Jeff, sent this guy some money and where the hell did it go? Did any good ever come of it? Yeah. Because I helped flesh out that AIDS section of the real Anthony Fauci. The real Anthony Fauci took down Fauci. That was, 2 million. They weren't allowed to advertise the book. No one reviewed it. The New York Times wouldn't review it. Nobody would touch it. NPR, the great NPR. And by the way, I hear their money's been taken away from them. If that's true, that's one of the greatest pieces of news I've ever heard. They deserve $0 when it comes to support from the public. Do you know, for example, who was promoting the Iraq War full force? That was NPR. They've never seen a war they didn't like. They are the National Petroleum Radio Network. And then they layer on all this woke bullshit. But they shouldn't get a nickel from us. They're a horrible group of people. But in any event, Kennedy the only way you sell books is if you get reviews, if you get on NPR, if you get here, if you New York Times, Washington. He got none of that, and he sold 2 million books. Do you realize how powerful that is? You may think, well, 1 million, that's not. No, there are not many books that sell over 1 million, right? And there are very few nonfiction books that sold over 1 million. That book took down Fauci. And taking down Fauci is what began to break up this COVID catastrophe, this authoritarian, insane, medically, scientifically, logically insane world that we were all living in. By the way, if you want to, look into this, you can talk to serious, honest economists about why we're in the horrific financial situation the country is in now, and it's going to get worse. It's all the hangover from the Fauci COVID Trump Biden scam. We're still paying the bill. We're going to pay that bill for decades. It was like we believe it or not, we're still paying off the Vietnam War, I believe. How crazy is that? Okay, how long ago was that? We're still paying it off. We will be paying off what they did to us during COVID for decades to come financially. Okay, and what does that mean? Reduced standard of living. What does that mean? Everything's more expensive. And as I tell people, because I've traveled the world, it's bad not to have money to be able to go to a store to buy something. You know what's worse? There's no store to go to buy it, and we are losing supply chains and all kinds of stuff. It's slowly dawning on people that you actually need minerals and metals and to build things. Holy smokes! And gee, the Chinese make everything and we make nothing. Ooh, that might be a problem. Yeah, you think? Anyway, hopefully that will turn around. But anyway, just to go back to this, if you're wondering, hey, I support this brass check thing. Why do I do it? Well, of the many things we've done, one of them was to provide Kennedy with that essential information, which was the backbone, really. If you look at the book, there's 5 big chapters right in the middle of it, and that's what a lot of people focused on. That took Fauci down, that shortened the COVID. We could still be living under the COVID thing. People started reading that book he wrote, Kennedy wrote. And like, wow, maybe Fauci's not such a good guy after all. I mean, when 2 million people buy a book, that means, for every person that reads a book, that person will tell 10 people. Suddenly that's like 20 million plus people, like nearly 10% of the country being finally informed about the whole scam of Anthony Fauci and COVID and et cetera. That was a big deal. And so as a result of that, we now have a sane food pyramid, the food pyramid that existed in every society, civilization, and culture since the beginning of time. And it only got reversed when Kellogg and Cargill and Arthur Daniels Midland, the corn syrup criminals, it only got turned around and made insane when those people paid off the federal government. And finally, we have somebody in the HHS department that says, no, guess what? Um, Meat and cheese and milk and yogurt and, fish, uh, all these things, they're actually good for you. How do you like that? This has never been a question at any time. I have friends that are vegans and I tried it. Um, Bad idea. Sorry to my friends that are into it. Not a good idea. Not healthy. I'm not saying you got to gorge yourself on meat 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but it is kind of what human beings eat and have eaten since the beginning of time. So anyway, we now have a sane food pyramid, and that will have an influence on the kids because now you can't say, well, we'll send you macaroni. You can have all the macaroni you want, all the spaghetti you want, all the toast you want, all the bagels you want. But yeah, good food. I don't know about that. It's a little expensive. Well, that's changed. And then the other thing, and this is huge, and it will result in saving millions of kids' lives. I don't know how far the impact will be. Every time you inject somebody in something, and by the way, this is going to be in my new book, and we've had Mark Girardeau talking about this, and we're going to feature it in the book. Every time you inject somebody with anything, it's a risk. Okay? And these crazy vaccines, the ingredients are insane. The medical rationale is insane. So when you inject a kid 80 times over the course of your life, his or her life, you're just increasing the odds you're going to make them sick permanently or you're going to injure them catastrophically. So did we get a perfect outcome? Not yet, but Kennedy has more than halved the number of coerced vaccinations that American children have to get. Our kids are now on the same level as Denmark and the same level as Germany. Other modern countries. Unbelievable. So anyway, point is, these are huge triumphs. And if you're a brass check supporter, you contributed because I know I contributed to it, and you contributed to me so that I could do this work. And I'm hoping if this book is ever written and it doesn't kill me in the process, because it just gets harder and harder every day, but it will get done and it will be worth it, I hope. I take the way I demolished Fauci and I take it all the way back through the history of so-called modern medicine, starting with Pasteur. And I demolish it every step of the way. I always had a sense that this thing was a fraud. And you kind of hear people talking about it, in vague terms. This book takes a microscope and we go through it one step at a time. Every medical milestone that they claim, that big breakthrough, and it's all, I can't find any single medical, I cannot find any single, especially in the infectious disease area. I cannot find, which is our biggest problem, not that we have a lot of infectious diseases, but the way we treat and prevent infectious diseases is destroying the population, basically, to put it mildly. So I go through essentially the history of infectious disease, but I also cover psychiatric stuff, but focused on infectious disease. And I cannot find a single medical milestone, historical milestone that this is the big breakthrough. We got Pasteur, we got Robert Koch, Koch, with the Koch's postulates. Oh, we got the first injection, the first vaccine. It's all a triumph. Not only is it not a triumph, it is a shit show that makes COVID look like a rational, well thought out plan. That's how bad it is. There's no science anywhere, guys. Nowhere. There's no science. There's no medical sanity, and there's no logic. And you'll see. I start with Pasteur, and I take it all the way up to the first part of the 20th century. And once we hit World War One, post World War One, then we were on automatic pilot. So I'm covering those. It's roughly 70 years where the whole medical profession just flipped on its head and went from imperfection, because it's always going to be imperfect. We're never going to have perfect anything. Why should we? Can't. It's not possible. But we had a very different medical mentality, a very different medical community, very different medical priorities. And starting in roughly the middle of the 19th century, everything flipped. And it became assembly line. It became find the virus and eradicate it. And that's all of health. Forget everything else. Forget diet. Forget environmental quality. Forget food adulteration. Forget all that. None of that, man. Forget exercise. Forget letting kids have recess. Forget all that stuff. We're just going to inject people with stuff, and that's going to solve the problem. Okay. Uh, that all started in the middle of the 1800s, and after World War One, that became medicine and everything else. I mean, obviously, there's orthopedic surgeons and there's podiatrists and dermatologists and all that kind of stuff. But the core of how medicine is practiced is literally, and you'll see in my book, clinically insane. Now, remember, I'm just going to leave you with this point. When I went after Fauci very early, remember, he was God in the year 2020. To even speak about him negatively, you were a bad guy. Well, I made a whole film about how bad he was that year. I left out, I released little pieces of it in 2020. The full thing came out in August of 2020. There are many world famous COVID resistors who are pulling down six figures, on their Substacks, who were still supporting Fauci when my film came out. Right now, they've seen the light, and thank God for that. It's good. But the point is, we demolished Fauci. Now the task is to demolish the infectious disease model. Do people get sick? Yes. Why they get sick and why the treatments and the vaccinations that they use are not called for, that's something that needs to be looked at. Now, obviously, if somebody's all the way at the end of an infectious disease state and it's just ravaging and it's hopeless, well, then you got to do whatever you got to do. But you remember, if you read my book, then I'll leave you with this: what the nurses saw, which is a genuine bestseller, by the way. If you sell more than 5,000 books, that is considered a bestseller. I don't know. Last time I looked, we're over 15,000. That is a good selling book. That puts you in the top 10% of all books sold in the course of a year. What did they do to the COVID patients when they tested positive? Right? They said you can't have anti-inflammatories, and you can't have inhalable steroids. Never been done before in the history of medicine. Why do they do that? They wanted people to get super sick so that they could then use the super invasive, super expensive, super subsidized, incentivized treatments like remdesivir, like invasive ventilation. And if you haven't read what the nurses saw, you have no idea how bad it was. Like, we estimate they killed hundreds of thousands of people. Hundreds. This is their model. Don't do anything. And this is, you don't have to take my word for it. If they don't treat anything, how about this? You have a house. You see people, sitting on the front porch smoking cigarettes and throwing their cigarette on the porch, right? It's like a rooming house, right? You have guys storing gasoline cans underneath the porch, or crazy stuff, right? doesn't it make more sense to say, hey, you know what? You can't smoke in the house, and you can't smoke on the porch, and you can't throw your cigarette on the porch, and you can't store gasoline. I mean, like that would be the thing that makes sense, right? That would prevent a fire, right? It's the same thing with modern medicine. There are many, many signs that somebody is on the road to a serious illness, and it's visible. It's you don't need tests. You can just listen to somebody describing their life. That's when the intervention should take place. Our system is designed specifically to never, ever pay because we're all insurance now. You're either getting government insurance or there's private insurance. Nobody can afford medical care anymore, right? So you only get a doctor only gets compensated for showing up and putting out a raging inferno. There's nothing in the medical insurance coding that allows a doctor or a nurse or anybody to spend any time working with people, helping them arrest disease states when they're early on. You got that? I hope I'm making that clear. They literally let the house catch fire, even though they see people throwing matches on it and throwing gasoline. It's like, that's okay. Can't spend a nickel to stop that. But once the house is on fire, then we can spend trillions. And by the way, last thing, I always say it's the last thing. One of the reasons, besides all the fraud, right, is finally coming out, and I'm going to do a video on that. That we've known about these social service frauds forever. I'll show you evidence of that. But anyway, better late than never, right? So you got the military with their fraud is mind-boggling. Then you have all these social service frauds, which hundreds of billions of dollars. But then you have the one that's really killing us is the medical system fraud. And by when I mean fraud, I mean the intellectual, scientific, medical basis is a fraud, and it's geared to extract maximum amount of money from the populace. Okay, that is why our country's going down the tubes because you can't have a nice life if you have no money. You know, I mean, you can be philosophically and spiritually elevated, but it's more pleasant to be able to go to the store and buy groceries. I mean, it's nice to be able to go to the store and buy. We're getting to the point as a nation where we can't even go to the store and get groceries. I mean, that's metaphorical, but there are people in that situation too. But in any event, it is the medical fraud, and I mean that writ large, all caps in all dimensions, that's sucking this country down a black hole. And I'm addressing it in the new book. That's why you're not seeing much of me. And it will come out someday. And when you see it, you'll understand. This whole thing has been based on scientific, medical fraud enforced by who? By well-oiled politicians. I know I mean, it's like, are we surprised? But no one apparently, I'm looking, no one has ever told the story in a way that consistently shows you this guy was a fraud and he was supported by this political regime and this PR guy and this guy was a fraud and he was da-da-da and this guy. I mean, it's like it's the same. And Fauci, what was Fauci? Fauci was a politically supported fraud, bolstered by a multi-billion-dollar public relations campaign. And then what I want to say, and this will be the last thing, it wasn't just Fauci. You can look at everything, especially in the realm of infectious diseases, but also psychiatric diseases. It's always the same story. Crap, not just shoddy science, crap, garbage science being medicalized, being politicized, being financialized, and that's our medicine. And it's not just, a little problem here, a little problem there. The whole foundation is rotten at the core, and we're going to take it out. That's why I want to get this book done. So anyway, those of you that have been supporting, this is what we're working on. I think this book will have a big impact. I know Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will read it, and he's not just a guy that can't get posts on Facebook anymore. He's the head of Health and Human Services. And he's shown the ability to get things done. And I have some things in the book that I don't think he's aware of. In fact, I know he's not. And it's going to put the lights on for him in a big way. So anyway, to supporters, thank you very much. If you're not a supporter, consider being one. You're getting all this. Well, I don't produce as much as I used to, but our archive is vast. If you go to brasschecktv.com, you could binge on Brass Check videos and go way back, like 2005. We've been on this longer than Joe Rogan. All right, thanks for everything. Happy New Year, everybody. It's going to be a great year. We're going to kick ass. We are actually going to kick ass. And I'm going to put out a very important health video very soon, which I want you to watch. Make sure you watch it with a pencil and paper. Nothing to buy, no supplements to get, just very simple things you can do to retool your life that will make a huge difference in your health. I'm having to learn them myself because I'm working myself to the bone. And it's like, oops, better pull back on that or you're going to end up in a bad way. And I don't intend to end up in a bad way. All right. Happy New Year.
Brass Check TV, free to you, not free to us. We've got a server bill, we've got an email software bill, we've got a tech helper bill, and that happens every month. So to everybody that is supporting us financially, that's paying for their subscription in one way or another, we really appreciate it. If you're not, consider doing so. Everybody's got money for the newspaper and the cable bill and all that. Do you have money for media that's actually serving you? That's really the issue here. And when you help us, it allows us to get this information out to the world. So thanks to all our supporters, and if you're not a supporter already, please consider becoming one.